welcome to All Hands on Deck. As usual, it's always such a pleasure inviting therapists, specialists on the platform, talking about different topics. And today I'm pleased to welcome Antoinette Wells, who are going to talk to us about, first of all, how to put boundaries in our lives. And secondly, what is the importance of having self-esteem? So please welcome Antoinette Wells in UK. Hello, Antoinette.
Hello, Virginie.
Always a pleasure seeing you.
Yes, absolutely. In different countries as usual.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you so much for taking the time to share with us a lot of beautiful insight that you are going to develop today. Antoinette, my question on boundaries is how do you see when we are in lack of boundaries, or when it's really time to, you know, to put our limits and not to be too rigid or too how to say, gentle with ourselves, to have, you know, this kind of fear to hurt others. Sometimes boundaries can really make people respect you more. So I would like you to tell us a little bit more on a specialist and therapist side.
Well, absolutely, Virginie. Boundaries is a big topic. And the problem is that a lot of people don't realize the importance of boundaries. And they don't even know if they have some boundaries or not. Usually, they realize they don't have boundaries when they are in trouble and they come to therapy. And then, of course, we can talk about it and then see where there is a lack of boundaries in their lives, and if they have no boundaries or if they have rigid boundaries. And then we can discuss how to set proper boundaries.
Well, this is very interesting what you said, that when we come and see, when in fact we have a problem, it's because we forgot the boundaries. I never thought of that.
Absolutely. Well, this is absolutely obvious, for instance, in different circumstances, like, for instance, in addiction. Addiction is an extreme case because people, when they are addicts, have no boundaries at all. They are like an express train crashing, and they don't have their own boundaries, and they don't respect boundaries of others. And that's how I develop a whole kind of personal research on boundaries, because you need to have boundaries in your life. And also boundaries are very much linked with self-esteem, because if you don't have boundaries, you can't have self-esteem, because self-esteem is linked with it.
So what when boundaries are absent of unhealthy, what would you recommend? That people become vulnerable or abused, or?
Yeah, well, exactly. So there's different categories. First, so boundaries is to protect your reality, emotionally, physically, intellectually, and spiritually. And it's about being in the center. And when you set a boundary, it's not like bluffing, or it's not manipulating something. It's really stating your own reality. When you do this, I feel. If you continue, I will. You know, that's really firm, isn't it? You know,
okay.
So you separate yourself from the other person.
Yes.
So when there's no boundaries, then something happened that we call enmeshment, and the people can't see where they start and where they finish, and where the other person start and they finish, and there's a whole imbroglio between people. And then of course they can be very vulnerable. So of course lack of boundaries can lead to abuse, physical, emotional, sexual, you know.
Yes, because you let the other lead your life. You lose the master skill of your own life, right?
Exactly. So for instance, somebody can't say no to someone. they are incapable of saying no.
So once again, it comes into this, I guess, a childhood a shock or trauma where you start pleasing people unless you don't want, because you don't want hurt, you don't want confrontation. And also, my question, Antoinette, is the lack of boundaries, I guess, start at a very early age, and we should look at it as soon as possible, because then you drag all these things that are not you, and you become then really non-aligned with your own self.
Absolutely. So that's why I am a psychodynamic counselor, meaning that I work with the relationship, therapeutic relationship, and I go in the past with my clients. You know, we go and see where problems have been started in the past. That's different than, for instance, different type of therapy like CBT or things like that. We just go much more in depth.
Yes.
Visit things which have happened in the past. And for instance, if a child has had an insecure attachment in very early childhood with either of the parents or even a surrogate parent, then it's going to have difficulty to cope with boundaries and also with attachment later on in life. Because he will not have this kind of, we say in French, garde-fou, you know, kind of barrier,
yes,
limit around himself.
So what would be the sign that in different aspects of our life, it can be in business, it can be in relationship, it can be in different way, but what is the red flag that can show us that, oh my God, here I don't have any boundaries? How does it reflect? Is it when you ask to yourself, okay, am I happy in this job, or am I happy in this relationship? Is it when you start asking yourself because you feel that there is something not aligned with your well-being, your happiness, your balance?
Yeah, that's one example. For instance, somebody who has no boundaries will stay in a job that she doesn't like because she won't be able to assert herself, either to get promoted or to change her job. So she will remain unhappy because she doesn't have boundaries for herself, and then also linked with self-esteem as well.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then of course in relationship, there's a lot of different examples
So can you give us a little bit the first step you do when you have someone who is lacking of boundaries, and what will be your first advice, or maybe to the audience today, a little tip or advice that you can give to us today?
Well, I won't be giving advice. That's one thing. I will actually try to explore with my client what has happened in their lives. And then from there, kind of drawing from the history of their lives,
yes,
we are going to see together what has happened and what has been missed in their growing up.
And then when they acknowledge that, Antoinette, how can they how can we integrate and place the boundaries? Is it because you're going to tell us something that will explain to us something significant, or will it open our eyes to a topic saying, oh, of course, I've never saw that all my life because this and that? I don't know. How does it shift slowly and to settle boundaries when we have a therapy with you?
Because through the relationship, the therapeutic relationship with me, we are going to be able to set things which are balanced. First, I mean, when you start therapy, there's boundaries anyway. Obviously, if it is online, it's a bit different. But boundaries are, for instance, to be exact, to be coming on time, that the payments are regular. These are all boundaries, and that the there is a mutual respect. These are all setup of boundaries in the therapy. So it starts with the setup. Of course, if it is face-to-face, it's very much about the place where it is with the therapy is taking place, how the room is set up, and all these things. And also, for instance, the therapist will say, if you can't come to therapy for one reason, you need to give me 24 hours notice. This is a boundary from the side of the therapist. So actually, all these boundaries, when we do an assessment, is already a kind of setup which shows what boundaries are.
Okay.
And yeah, well, of course, it's through the therapy you can learn what boundaries are, but it's very much through the story of the person that we are going to see where boundaries can be set up or where there has been a lack of boundaries.
Absolutely, Antoinette. Is it? I heard many times that all our who we are today, it's a lot between the age of young age, like 2 to 7 years old. I mean, where we have had experiences of being not cared, being not loved, being not recognized, being not heard. Is it right that really it's something that we drag since such a young age?
Absolutely.
Oh,
that's why then therapy.
Teenagers should do therapy before heading a problem at later on in their life. No, it should be a must do in the list.
Absolutely. And the problem is then when there is kind of problems in early childhood, the bad patterns repeat themselves throughout growing up, until they get really very difficult. For instance, in a relationship, and a woman will say, why do I always need a guy who is going to make me suffer or going to leave me or there's something wrong there because it happened now 5 times, So
it's because she forgot to put boundaries, and when she sees something, she doesn't have the courage to say, "This I'm not interested," or I don't agree.
No. It's not as simple as that. It's because maybe growing up, she has not have the template to actually find somebody who is healthy for her. For instance, if that person has been abused, emotionally abused in the childhood, she's going to repeat that pattern later, you see, in life. And then, unless and until she can see that, recognize that it's something unhealthy there, then she will be able then to change. You see what I mean? Yeah.
So I like the relation between boundaries and self-esteem, because self-esteem is also boundaries that you put with yourself. I mean, you protect yourself. You want to feel balanced. You want to at the end love yourself. You have. I think, Antoinette, nowadays, all the problem comes because we don't love ourselves, we don't have enough esteem of ourselves, and then people take it for granted, and then you slip into this unbalance because you try to compensate, and you said also in couple of our interview, you call about codependency, and also I don't want to talk today about codependency, but I think that when you don't have self-esteem, automatically you go and get something else as a substitute. Am I right?
Exactly. Yeah. But if we come back to what you said, that you don't love yourself.
Yes.
Why? Again, we have to go back to childhood. And if, the 3 first years are critical of a child in growing up. So if they have a good enough mother, as Winnicott states, there's some great psychologists who have actually put the kind of fundaments of therapy, like Jung, like Winnicott, like Bowlby, etc. I mean, very beautiful psychologists. And they say that a mother has not to be perfect, but she has to be good enough. So what is good enough meaning is that she's going to give all, with the nourishment, physical nourishment of the child, she's also going to give emotional nourishment to the child. And maybe, you know, the baby might not be kind of perfectly, you know, dressed or something, but she will give all the love to this child as much as she can with the nourishment. So this child will have this, the setup to love himself or herself later on in life. And this is absolutely true, I know, because my experience in 20 years of being a therapist, I have seen that, you know, that when there's a lack of proper nourishment from the main carer, it can be another carer. You know, it can be a grandmother if the mother is absent or the father is absent. And also a father can be a good enough dad, you know, if the mother is not there or there's been a divorce or whatever. It's about the kind of quality of care, of nourishment.
Yes, yes.
And all this is a condition for a person to have a good self-esteem.
Absolutely.
That's why we say that the first years of growing up are absolutely critical.
It's so
childhood.
Essential.
Yeah, it's absolutely essential. Yeah, and then of course later, but it's more than all the money in the world and all that. You know, it's really being good enough.
But Antoinette, really, the self-love is so important, and I think a lot of us, we lack of confidence, we lack of boundaries, we lack of self-esteem because we are too much concerned by what people project or judge or say about and this and that. And I think that, you know, in many occasions and business-wise, etc., when you are firm, when you know how you deal in business, for example, people will just like close their mouth, listen to you. And so this is so important to have a self-esteem, to know what you want. And nowadays, Antoinette, I think it's very important for the audience to know that it's not, therapy is something like coaching, like we need at a certain time in our life, we need to have a little bit of guidance and to reassess our values, our beliefs, our everything that is within us, because sometimes we can just go on the wrong path for really just an adjustment of a few sessions with the therapist.
Absolutely. Like for instance, you just talked about business. There's a big thing in business is about controlling. You see, for instance, it's very controlling. What does it mean? This boss has a low self-esteem. He's insecure in himself because one controls to be safe. You see what I mean? So somebody who is very secure in himself or herself is not going to be extremely bossy. They will be able to direct and lead in a very balanced way, without controlling, without being over bossy.
Yes.
So you see, in the self-esteem and the boundaries, this is again an elastic there.
Yes.
So lack of boundaries leads to complete vulnerability. Rigid boundaries lead to control or over control.
Yes.
And it's the same in relationship. If you are insecure, you are going to try to control everything and not being relaxed and let go of a situation to let the situation develop or find a way, you know, kind of to discuss things properly without being enmeshed again. You see what I mean? I do this gesture because it's not two people with kind of a separate space in between them.
Absolutely, yeah. And
I just always gave to my patient, this image that to grow properly, two trees to grow their roots in the soil have to have a good space between them.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
You see? So this image of the two trees is really quite valid in that kind of situation. because they need the space to
Yes.
grow. Otherwise, they will choke themselves. Yeah.
And Antoinette, what is the low self-esteem has significant consequences on the development of ourselves, and then it affects our life, etc. What would be for you the low self-esteem aspect that you can see in your clients or in everybody that you meet? I mean, I'm sure you can detect that immediately. Maybe to tell us today can really recall something for each and every one of us. What would be the sign of a low self-esteem as a therapist?
Well, that's, kind of, it's a difficulty to assert yourself in a balanced way. And like you said before, you can spot if somebody don't love themselves at all. There will be some signs of that. Maybe they will neglect their appearance, or maybe they will be for instance, too much makeup for a woman, too much, if she has a facade, then if she has a mask, mask, which is not her, this is also an appearance of low self-esteem, because who is behind the mask?
Yeah.
Is it a real person? You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And then we'll have to find who this real person is, because there is a mask there. And that can be a sign of low self-esteem.
Yes, yes. But the good news is that everything can be rebalanced. And that's why there is people like you, therapists, who have an eye on this, who have studied deeply those few problems that are major, that are within all of us at different level, of course. But I think it's very important nowadays to take consideration to, introspect and have the help of specialists, therapists, to get more free, to get more to where you are meant to be and to go and to feel balance.
And you are right to say that there is different degrees, definitely. There is, there's a lot of degree in self-esteem and boundaries. See, some people really need, for instance, some addicts or alcoholics needs to have hospitalization because they need to rebuild themselves totally from scratch. Yeah, that's one extreme. Yeah. But what I mean by that, it can be done as well at that level. But then there's other levels which are not at all as complex and difficult. And it's just people who feel that they are not getting from their own lives what they would like. They are not reaching the goals that
exactly. They want. That's where we need you.
Yeah. And then, they need a little nudge. They need a nudge, yes. a little helping hand to find out how they can do that, from where this lack of self-esteem or maybe sometimes self-sabotaging comes. Yeah. And then we can reset the clock. Yeah. If you see.
But it's like in everything, you do study, then you want to do a master. I mean, you always need to make yourself more alert, more knowledgeable. And for this, you need specialists. I mean, we should not look at therapy as something like when you are really, completely depressed or alcoholic or whatsoever. Therapy is something, is a day-to-day introspection, even with yourself, with what you read, with what you listen. And we should not neglect that. And having also, children of that age where they start their life because they are starting they finish the education, this, that. I think it's the right time also to have a session with the therapist to, where they can be themselves, put the boundaries, have self-esteem. And I think it's really something essential nowadays, especially with all this COVID. And I wanted to ask you a last question, Antoinette. It's when you talk about codependency, I think sometimes, I mean, maybe it's me, but for me, codependency is it risks everybody. You see, when you go in a public place and not everybody's on the phone, they cannot, you know, I mean, codependency can have also other it's other extents, like can be shopping, it can be always going out, it can be always on your phone, it can be always going online and buying things and things like that. So it's something to consider also at that stage, no?
Well, it's two different things you are talking about there. There is all sorts of addiction that you can have now. You can have a computer games addiction, you can have your mobile addiction, you can have, you know, gambling addiction, you can have shopping addiction, you know, and all these things. You know,
so what do we have to tell ourselves when we are like doing, you know, most of our hours on a phone or this or that? What does it bring?
Well, it means that you don't know yourself. And you are quite unhappy. You try to fill a void in yourself with all that, you know.
Because it's absolutely that.
Yeah. So it's to certain degrees, to different degrees.
Yes.
So when it becomes extreme, then you are really into the addiction mode. But there is also less degrees, you know, like a little bit of retail therapy sometimes is really quite nice.
Absolutely.
Like
but it must
going
not
to a
be
shopping
like
mall in Dubai. but no, I'm laughing now. No, but it's true. There's different degrees with.
So it means that we feel something that is lacking within us. This is a very good, question that we can ask to each other. Yeah.
Yeah, something is missing, and then you fill this void by something which cannot actually satisfy. It's you know, these goods are not satisfying this lack in yourself. That's where also self-esteem comes back into. You know, if you have self-esteem, you are going to regulate yourself to the point that you are not going to be too distracted by all the temptations out there.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah?
Fantastic. Wonderful, Antoinette. So I look forward having you for a live chat Q&A regarding this topic, because nowadays we all question ourselves, and it's so important for all hands on deck to have specialists like you who can guide us, who can help us, having session on a private basis. And also we will talk later on about how we can do amazing workshop in a group also that helps, you know, decluttering all our luggages and all our lack of self-esteem and so on. So thank you so much, Antoinette, for being on the platform today. And to all of you listeners, I look forward to sending you the link where you will be able to ask your question to our therapist and get your answer. Thank you so much, Antoinette.
You're very welcome. Pleasure.
And hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Antoinette.